pregnant with all kinds of things. It represented progress.
Sidney Poitier won an Oscar in 1964 and became Hollywood's perfect gentleman. But for 29 years, he was fighting a battle nobody knew about. In 1993, doctors gave him devastating news. He kept it hidden through every award, every speech, every public appearance. Then, in 2018, something happened that changed everything. A fall left him unable to walk. His family watched him fade in ways that had nothing to do with age. When he died in 2022, the death certificate told a different story. And 1 year later, his niece finally spoke. What she revealed shattered everything we thought we knew. Sidney Poitier wasn't supposed to survive. He came into the world on February 20th, 1927. 2 months too early and weighing just 3 pounds. His parents had only come to Miami from the Bahamas to sell tomatoes. They were far from home, not expecting anything like this. A midwife helped deliver him, but everyone thought the baby wouldn't make it. His father, Reginald, was so sure of it that he bought a small casket. The doctors didn't argue. They said there was no hope. But his mother, Evelyn, wasn't ready to let go. She stayed in Miami for 3 long months, holding on to a fragile hope and nursing him back to life. She even went to see a soothsayer who told her not to be afraid. The woman said her son would live, walk with kings, and the whole world would know his name. That one sentence kept Evelyn going. When they returned to Cat Island, life was harder than most people today could even imagine. There were 10 of them, living in a small stone hut with a thatched roof. No electricity, no toilets, no running water, no cars, no phone. Sidney was just 6 when he started hauling water and collecting wood. Their clothes were made from old flour sacks. They cooked over fires they built themselves. And at night, they sat on the porch together, waving away mosquitoes with smoke. Still, what Sidney remembered most wasn't the hunger, it was the love. Then, in 1937, when he was 10, everything changed. Florida stopped buying Bahamian tomatoes, so the family moved to Nassau. It was the first time Sidney saw cars, electric lights, and indoor plumbing. Flush toilets amazed him, but what shook him more was the way white kids looked at him like he didn't belong. Back on Cat Island, everyone was black. In Nassau, he saw what it meant to be treated like you were less. That feeling never left him. He also nearly died again as a child. While swimming on Cat Island, he started drowning. His brother jumped in and saved him. After that, Sidney developed a deep fear of water that stayed with him forever. Even in Hollywood, he avoided movie roles that involved swimming. It reminded him of how easily life could be lost on that island, where there were no doctors, no hospitals, and no help if something went wrong. When he was 14, things got worse. Sidney started stealing food, mostly corn. It was a mix of hunger and rebellion. He ended up in jail for one night. His father had already seen other boys in the family get into trouble. He didn't want Sidney to follow the same path. So, in 1943, at age 15, he was sent to Miami to live with his older brother Cyril. He arrived with just $3 in his pocket, and he stepped straight into the harshest side of America. There were white-only signs everywhere. The Ku Klux Klan followed him through the streets. 5 white police officers once tracked him for 35 blocks, threatening to kill him. He lived in a garage and went to bed hungry most nights. He didn't understand this country where being black made him a target. It crushed him. The trauma was real, and it never went away. To escape the cold and the fear, he lied about his age. At 16, he joined the U.S. Army pretending to be 18. They sent him to work at a veterans psychiatric hospital in Long Island. What he saw there shook him. Patients were abused daily. After 10 months, he couldn't take it anymore. He came up with a wild plan. He pretended to be mentally unstable. He threw a chair near a psychiatrist's head, flipped a food cart, and acted violent. When asked why, he admitted everything. He told the doctor he just wanted out. After 5 weeks of talking through his pain, especially about racism, he was discharged in December 1944 for being mentally unfit. He walked out free but damaged. He returned to New York with nothing. No money, no place to sleep. He crashed in bus stations, on rooftops, in pay toilets. In 1945, he found a dishwashing job and paid $5 a week for a tiny room with a cot and one bare light bulb. But there was a problem. He couldn't read. One night, an old Jewish waiter noticed him struggling. Every evening after work, the man sat with Sidney, teaching him how to read using newspapers. He asked for nothing in return. That kindness changed Sidney's life forever. But the streets were still dangerous. During the Harlem riots of August 1943, Sidney got caught in the chaos. A black soldier was shot by police, and violence erupted. Sidney ran for his life, even pretended to be dead inside a store. Still, he got shot in the leg on Lenox Avenue. He slept on park benches, got arrested for vagrancy, and considered turning himself into an institution just to have a warm bed. He later wrote that he wasn't sure if he'd actually gone crazy for real. In 1946, he saw an ad in the newspaper. A local black theater group was looking for actors. He went in to audition. The director laughed at him. He said Sidney couldn't read, couldn't speak right, and told him to get back to dishwashing. Sidney left, humiliated, but he bought a radio and started studying American announcers. He practiced speaking like them for hours every day. After 6 months, he tried again. This time, he almost ruined it by slipping back into his Bahamian accent. But something had changed. He wasn't going to stop, and they gave him a chance. That same year, he got a role in a Broadway play called Lysistrata. On opening night, he panicked. He forgot his lines and walked off stage in shame. He thought his career was over. He walked over 150 blocks back home, feeling like a failure. But the next day's newspaper said something else. They had noticed him. One critic even asked, "Who was that kid in the first act who stole the show?" That line saved his confidence. He kept going. He cleaned floors at the American Negro Theater just so he could study acting. He and Harry Belafonte used to share one theater ticket between them, taking turns watching plays and exchanging plot notes at intermission. When Belafonte fell sick during a performance, Sidney stepped in. That was his real start. In 1950, he got a film role that changed everything. He played a doctor in No Way Out. In one scene, a white actor spit in his face. In another, a dying racist refused his treatment. The South banned the film. KKK members sent him death threats. They mailed photos of lynchings and even sent a noose. The FBI had to get involved. 20th Century Fox hired bodyguards to protect him. Sidney changed hotels 3 times just to stay safe. One night, he found a note saying, "You're next." He almost quit. But he didn't, because he knew the role mattered too much. Even after No Way Out, he struggled. In 1949, he turned down a $700 role because the script made his character weak and silent in the face of tragedy. His second child was about to be born. He needed $75 just for the hospital. Still, he said no. He pawned furniture instead. His agent called him crazy. But later, that same agent said he wanted to represent Sidney forever because of that decision. In March 1955, Sidney Poitier's breakout role in Blackboard Jungle caused something much bigger than a movie buzz. He played a smart black student named Gregory Miller. But some parts of the country weren't ready to see that on screen. Memphis banned the film right away. In Atlanta, the review board didn't just ban it. They called it immoral, obscene, and dangerous for public morals. The ban in Atlanta lasted until July 1955. But the damage didn't stop there. Years later in 1960, Georgia's governor used the film as a warning. In front of lawmakers, he said the Supreme Court's Brown versus Board decision would lead to crime, drugs, violence, and what he called blackboard jungles all over the South. The movie didn't just cause arguments, it sparked chaos. Across the country, kids danced so wildly in the aisles to the film's rock soundtrack that theaters reported broken seats, riots, and arrests. Then came the Defiant Ones in 1958. Poitier's role as Noah Cullen earned him an Oscar nomination for Best Actor, the first ever for a black man. The film was praised by critics and won 21 award nominations in total. Poitier even won the BAFTA. But something strange happened in black communities. Audiences yelled at the screen, begging his character to run, not to save the white man chained to him. The ending showed Poitier's character leaping from a moving train to help the man who had betrayed him, and many viewers saw that as a painful symbol. They said it was the same old message, that the black man must always forgive and sacrifice. James Baldwin didn't hold back. He said the ending proved Hollywood expected black characters to suffer, so white characters could be redeemed. Even the film's director later said the story was about the glory of sacrifice, not realizing how loaded that message felt when the character doing the sacrificing was always black. In 1959, Porgy and Bess stirred up even more trouble. Poitier had turned down the role again and again, but studio pressure finally wore him down. Harry Belafonte had refused outright, saying the story's portrayal of black life was too harmful. The NAACP urged a boycott. The Council for the Improvement of Negro Theater Arts joined in. When the film finally came out, it wasn't released on VHS or DVD. That's how toxic it had become. Years later, Poitier told Oprah it was the one role he wished he'd never taken. He couldn't stand how the movie showed black people as poor, broken, and stuck in the past, especially at a time when the civil rights movement was growing stronger every day. In Edge of the City from 1957, Poitier played Tommy Tyler, who forms a close friendship with a white man played by John Cassavetes. That friendship got the film banned across Southern theaters. Distributors didn't even want to show it, unless the scenes of the two men being close were cut. Even though the NAACP praised the movie, the South refused it. The trouble wasn't just on screen. While filming, Poitier got questioned by the FBI. They asked about his connection to Paul Robeson and Canada Lee, both black men who were seen as threats for standing up to racism. NBC even told Poitier to distance himself from these men, or lose the role. The film didn't do well in the US, mostly because Southern theaters refused to show it. But overseas, it became a hit. At the same time, the FBI had already started watching Poitier closely. He was gaining fame fast, but his friendships made him a target. The government labeled him a possible threat because he showed support for civil rights leaders. He had gone to a tribute event for Paul Robeson, which made things worse. NBC executives gave him a list of his dangerous friends and told him to sign a paper rejecting them. If he didn't, his career could be over. He refused. He wouldn't betray his friends. But that meant agents followed him, tracked who he met, and listened in on where he went. All through the late 1950s, he was being watched just for caring about justice. Then, in 1964, something huge happened. On April 13th, Poitier won the Oscar for Best Actor for Lilies of the Field. He became the first black actor ever to win in that category. But even that came with backlash. In the film, he played a traveling handyman who helps a group of German nuns build a chapel. Some black critics weren't impressed. They said he was playing the magical Negro again, a perfect man who exists only to help white people. One writer said Poitier's characters were so perfect, they didn't even seem human. The film made a ton of money. In Atlanta, it even beat Gone with the Wind at the box office. But some viewers still wondered why Poitier always had to be noble, kind, and forgiving. That same year, he started filming in the heat of the night. In one scene, a white plantation owner slaps Poitier's character. The original script had him just take it. Poitier refused. He said his character had to slap back. The scene stayed, and it became one of the most talked about moments in film history. But behind the scenes, things got dangerous. They had planned to shoot in Mississippi, but threats from the Ku Klux Klan forced them to move most of the production up north. Poitier and the crew had bodyguards. They were harassed and followed. Still, the movie came out in 1967 and won Best Picture. That slap on screen wasn't just a scene. It became a symbol of standing up, even when it meant putting yourself at risk. In December 1967, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner hit theaters. The timing was bold. Just 6 months earlier, the Supreme Court had legalized interracial marriage, but it was still illegal in 17 states when the film was made. Public opinion wasn't on board either. In 1968, only 20% of Americans supported black-white marriages. Most people still hated the idea. Poitier played Dr. John Prentice, a perfect gentleman, a world-class doctor with no flaws. Even Poitier himself didn't like how clean the character was. He felt like the filmmakers were scared of showing real tension, so they made his character too polished. The film was still a success and made history by being the first interracial romance that didn't end in tragedy. But Poitier was stuck. To keep white audiences happy, His characters had to be spotless. 1968 should have been Poitier's best year. His 3 films from 1967 were all hits. To Sir with Love, In the Heat of the Night, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner were the top-grossing movies of the year. He became the #1 box office star in the country, but behind the scenes, his personal life was falling apart. He had been having a secret relationship with actress Diane Carroll since 1959, the year they met during Porgy and Bess. The affair lasted 9 years. He told Carroll he would leave his wife, Juanita Hardy, but he never did. He and Hardy had been married for 15 years and had 4 daughters. The affair hurt his family, but he kept it hidden while playing perfect roles on screen. In 1965, he and Hardy separated. She later said the pressure of Hollywood and the rumors tore them apart. In 1969, Poitier wanted to try something new. He decided to direct films, but as soon as he tried to hire black crew members, the studio unions pushed back. They refused to allow it. Hollywood wasn't just keeping black actors out of lead roles. It was keeping black people out of every job behind the camera. Poitier had to fight through legal challenges and meetings just to get his crew approved. It took him 3 years to make it happen. His first film as a director, Buck and the Preacher, came out in 1972. He cast his friend Harry Belafonte, continuing the same fight they'd both been in for years, trying to change not just the screen, but everything behind it too. Then, in 1974, Uptown Saturday Night changed everything. It was a fun comedy with an all-black cast, including Bill Cosby and Harry Belafonte. It made $11.8 million in the US, a huge number for a film like that. Hollywood didn't expect it to work. Poitier had to pay for most of the marketing himself, but the audience showed up, and it became a trilogy. The second film made even more, $26.2 million. In 2024, the first film was added to the Library of Congress for being culturally important. In 1980, Poitier directed Stir Crazy with Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. It made over $101 million, the biggest comedy that year. But behind the scenes, Pryor was falling apart from cocaine addiction. He showed up late, forgot lines, and acted out. Poitier had to reshoot scenes, use body doubles, and edit carefully to hide how bad things had gotten. Just after filming, Pryor nearly died after burning himself while using drugs. The film was a hit, but it was held together with tape. In 1988, Poitier returned to acting in Shoot to Kill after more than a decade away. He was 61, but still doing stunts. One scene had him hanging from a cliff, and the safety gear failed. He hurt his back badly. Filming stopped for 2 weeks. He needed therapy, but kept going. The movie made $29.3 million. He later said that was the moment he knew his action days were over. In 1997, he played Nelson Mandela in a TV film called Mandela and de Klerk. But critics in South Africa were not happy. They said Poitier, despite being a respected figure, couldn't understand Mandela's life fully. They said his accent didn't sound right, and the fact that he had never met Mandela made it worse. The film got good ratings and even award nominations, but it left a bitter taste for many who felt a local actor should have played the role. In 1991, Poitier directed Ghost Dad, starring Bill Cosby. It was a disaster. It lost money, got terrible reviews, and marked the end of his directing career. The special effects didn't work. The script was weak. Cosby became difficult to direct. Poitier said it was the worst experience he had as a filmmaker. Years later, when Cosby's crimes came to light, Poitier distanced himself completely. His marriage to Joanna Shimkus began in 1976, but trust didn't come easy. Poitier had met her on a movie set in 1969. Just 2 years after the end of his affair with Carroll. Even in the early years of their marriage, rumors about him kept coming. They eventually had 2 daughters and stayed together for 45 years, but it wasn't always peaceful. There were even rumors in the 1950s that he had a secret child. They grew louder in the 1980s, when a con artist named David Hampton fooled rich people by pretending to be Poitier's son. That lie inspired the play and movie 6 Degrees of Separation. Though the child rumor was never confirmed, it stuck with Poitier for years. People whispered, The tabloids speculated, and because Poitier kept his private life very private, the stories only grew. In August 1964, Sidney Poitier flew into Mississippi with Harry Belafonte carrying $70,000 in cash. That money was for civil rights workers risking their lives during Freedom Summer. They didn't expect what happened next. As soon as they landed, men from the Ku Klux Klan started chasing them. It wasn't just a scare. The Klan used trucks with wooden planks on the front to ram their car. They wanted them off the road. Poitier and Belafonte had to drive for their lives. Local activists created a convoy to protect them and get them to safety in Greenwood. That night, both men shared one bed under armed guard. Poitier made sure to sleep closest to the window, just in case bullets came through. The moment broke something in him. In front of a crowd, he wept and said he had been lonely his whole life, but now he felt surrounded by love. He was 37 years old, but love from the crowd didn't stop the government from keeping its eyes on him. The FBI watched him closely. They filled 13 pages with reports from 1959 to 1963. They tracked who he talked to. They followed his links to Martin Luther King Jr., to activist groups, to Freedom Summer. They labeled him potentially subversive. Even after he became a diplomat, serving as the Bahamas' ambassador to Japan from 1997 to 2007, they still saw him as a risk. While he represented a country on the world stage, his own country still treated him like a threat. That level of pressure never went away. In 1993, when he was 66, doctors told him he had prostate cancer. He didn't tell anyone outside his family. He had surgery and beat it, but he knew he had to change. He quit alcohol, quit sugar, quit meat, and started eating mostly vegetables. For 29 years, he kept this strict diet. He even joked that having ice cream meant he'd fallen off the wagon, but he stayed strong. Even in 2009, when President Barack Obama gave him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, no one in the room knew he had been quietly fighting cancer for 16 years. The citation that day praised him as someone who changed Hollywood. But the truth was, he was already in the late stages of his illness and still never said a word. All this happened while he was also dealing with another battle. In his 80s, Poitier started showing signs of Alzheimer's dementia. His family watched him forget things he had always known. The man who had once commanded stages and screens could now barely remember names. It shattered them. His niece said music therapy sometimes helped. Old songs could reach him when words couldn't. But the disease took more and more from him. And then, in 2018, when he was 91, he fell. The fall caused major head injuries and leg problems that kept him in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. The pain in his back grew worse. It hurt his heart, and the circulation in his legs got so bad, he needed constant care. Still, he refused to let anyone outside the family know how bad it was. He didn't want pity. He didn't want people to see him broken. What made it harder was that the world kept talking. In 1967, Black playwright Clifford Mason had written an article in the New York Times titled, "Why Does White America Love Sidney Poitier So?" That piece called his roles fake, one-dimensional, and too clean. Mason said Poitier's characters were like a black version of a white businessman in a gray suit. Pauline Kael, a film critic, added that his kindness on screen was ruining him as an actor. These weren't attacks from racists. They came from his own community, and they stayed with him for the rest of his life. Even after his death in 2022, at age 94, those same quotes showed up in obituaries and online posts. People still questioned whether he had done enough for black voices, but his family pushed back. They said he didn't raise his fist, but he kicked down doors. He chose roles that weren't available to black actors before him. And if he had said no, those parts would have gone to white men. After he died, his death certificate told the truth he had hidden so long. He died of heart failure, but prostate cancer and Alzheimer's dementia played a role too. His body had carried all of it silently. Cancer, dementia, back pain, leg damage, heart problems. He never asked for sympathy. His wife, Joanna, and his 5 daughters kept him safe, made sure he never had to be seen when he was weak. They gave him the dignity he gave to others for decades. And then in January 2023, a year after his death, his niece Rowena finally opened up. She gave an interview in Nassau for the Truth, Lies, and Alzheimer's podcast. She said the diagnosis had shattered the family. She said even with all their success, they had no proper tools to handle what Alzheimer's did to their beloved uncle. She was once the youngest director of culture in Bahamian history, but still felt helpless. She said it didn't matter how famous you were, Alzheimer's took what it wanted. It didn't care what you had done. In that same year, new Freedom of Information documents revealed just how hard the government had gone after him. They had watched him for years. They wrote reports on who he met, what he believed, how he spent his time. They saw a tall, calm black actor and called him dangerous, all because he stood next to Martin Luther King, all because he carried cash to activists, all because he didn't stay quiet. And they followed him with spies, with tapped phones, with hidden notes. The fall in 2018 might have broken his body. The dementia might have erased his memories. The cancer might have drained his energy, but none of that touched the core of who he was. He kept his pain private. He protected his legacy. He didn't fight with fists. He fought with presence, with dignity, with silence when needed. And when he finally left this world on January 6, 2022, at age 94, he did it the same way he lived. Strong, proud, and without asking for anyone's pity.